The papers felt like ice in my trembling hands, even though the lawyer's office was stifling hot that September afternoon. My daughter Brenna sat across from me, her 12-year-old face set in that stubborn expression I knew so well, while her stepfather Clayton adjusted his expensive watch and cleared his throat. "Mrs. Hartwell," he said in that smooth voice that had once charmed me during our brief marriage, "this really is for the best. Brenna will have security, stability, a future we can provide." The custody papers blurred as tears threatened to spill. I could smell Clayton's cologne, the same one he wore when he'd promised to love both Brenna and me forever, before he decided we weren't quite good enough for his social circle. Brenna wouldn't even look at me. 3 months earlier, she'd packed her favorite stuffed elephant and announced she was moving to Clayton's mansion because Daddy Clayton has a pool and you don't even have cable. The words had cut deeper than any knife. I'd been working 2 jobs just to keep our small apartment, coming home exhausted to find her sulking because her friends at private school talked about their vacations to Europe while we clipped coupons for groceries. "I hate living like this," she'd screamed that last night before she left. "I hate being poor, and I hate that you can't give me anything good." Now she sat there in her designer clothes, looking at her manicured nails, while Clayton's new wife, Vivienne, smiled that plastic smile and patted Brenna's shoulder possessively. The lawyer, a thin man with wire glasses, pushed the papers closer to me. "It's a simple termination of parental rights," he explained matter-of-factly, as if he wasn't asking me to sign away my heart. "Mr. and Mrs. Pemberton want to make their family official. No more complicated custody arrangements, no more complications." The way he said complications made it clear he meant me. My hands shook so violently I could barely hold the pen. The silence in that office was deafening except for the tick of an expensive clock on the wall, probably worth more than my monthly rent. I looked up at Brenna one more time, desperately searching her face for any sign of the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who'd beg me to read just one more story. Nothing. Her green eyes, so much like mine, stared right through me like I was already gone. "Brenna," I whispered, my voice cracking. "Honey, are you absolutely sure this is what you want?" For a split second, something flickered across her face. Doubt? Regret? But then Vivian's perfectly manicured hand tightened on her shoulder, and Brenna's expression hardened again. "Yes," she said, her voice small but determined. "I want Vivian to be my real mom now. She actually cares about me." The words hit like a physical blow. I doubled over slightly, my chest burning with a pain so sharp I thought I might be having a heart attack. Clayton leaned forward, his voice taking on that patronizing tone I remembered so well. "Diana, you have to understand. Brenna needs stability, private tutors, college preparation, connections that will open doors for her future. You're working at a diner and cleaning offices at night. You can't compete with what we can offer." He was right, and we all knew it. I was 34 years old, barely keeping my head above water, while he owned 3 car dealerships and lived in a gated community. The lawyer cleared his throat impatiently, probably eager to get to his next appointment. Outside, I could hear traffic humming past, people going about their normal lives while mine was ending. Something inside me snapped. Not broke. Snapped. Like a rubber band stretched too far, too long. I straightened up in that leather chair and looked directly at my daughter. Really, looked at her. This spoiled stranger in designer clothes who shared my DNA, but not my heart anymore. "Fine," I said, my voice steady for the first time all afternoon. The lawyer blinked in surprise. Clayton's smug smile faltered slightly. Even Vivian's perfectly practiced expression cracked just a little. I signed my name on every line, each letter deliberate and clear. Diana Marie Hartwell. The pen felt heavy in my hand, like I was signing my own death certificate. But with each signature, something else happened. The crushing weight in my chest began to lift, replaced by something I hadn't felt in months: freedom. When I finished, I placed the pen down carefully and stood up. "There," I said, looking at Brenna one final time. "You got what you wanted. I hope it makes you happy." Brenna's face went pale. For the first time since we'd entered that office, she looked uncertain, maybe even scared. "Mom?" she whispered, and for a split second she sounded like my little girl again. But I was done being manipulated by a child who'd chosen material comfort over the mother who'd sacrificed everything for her. "I'm not your mom anymore, remember?" I said quietly. "Vivian is. I'm sure she'll do a wonderful job giving you everything you want." I walked toward the door, my legs somehow steady despite feeling like they might collapse. Clayton called after me, something about staying in touch and what's best for everyone, but his words sounded hollow and far away. I had nothing left to lose now, which meant I had everything to gain. Outside in the hallway, I pulled out my phone and called the one person who'd stuck by me through all of this: my sister Maxine. "It's done," I said when she answered. "I signed them." Maxine met me at the diner where I worked, sliding into the cracked vinyl booth across from me with 2 cups of coffee and eyes full of fierce loyalty. "You did the right thing," she said before I could even speak. "I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but Diana, you did the right thing." My sister had always been my anchor. 2 years older, twice as brave, and the only person who'd never once suggested I should just give Brenna what she wants to keep the peace. "I keep waiting to fall apart," I admitted, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. "I keep thinking the pain is going to hit me, but instead I just feel empty, like someone scooped out everything inside me." Maxine reached across the table and squeezed my wrist. "That's not emptiness, honey. That's space. Space for you to finally build something that's yours." She was right, though I couldn't see it then. For 12 years, every decision I'd made revolved around Brenna: where we lived, what jobs I took, how I spent every spare penny. Now, for the first time since I was 22, I could make choices based on what I wanted. "Remember when we were kids and you used to say you wanted to open your own bakery?" Maxine continued, her voice gentle but insistent. "Remember how you'd make those incredible cinnamon rolls for church fundraisers and everyone would beg for the recipe?" I did remember. I'd forgotten so many dreams while struggling to survive as a single mother, but Maxine never forgot anything. "I've been thinking about this for months, watching you kill yourself trying to make Brenna happy while she just kept wanting more. You have a chance now to become who you were meant to be." That night, alone in my tiny apartment that suddenly felt too big without Brenna's things scattered everywhere, I pulled out a notebook and started writing. Not a business plan, nothing that organized yet, just dreams. A small bakery with mismatched chairs and the smell of fresh bread, maybe a little apartment above it, painted in colors I chose. A life where I wasn't constantly apologizing for not being enough. The pen moved across the page like it had a mind of its own, filling sheet after sheet with possibilities I'd buried under years of exhaustion and disappointment. 6 months later, I was standing in what would become Diana's Kitchen, a small storefront wedged between a bookstore and a flower shop on Maple Street. The rent was affordable, the location had foot traffic, and for the first time in years, I felt genuinely excited about waking up in the morning. I'd saved every penny from my 2 jobs, sold everything I didn't absolutely need, and Maxine had co-signed the lease when my credit wasn't quite enough. The space smelled like sawdust and possibility. "It's perfect," Maxine said, running her hand along the counter where I'd serve customers. "Small enough to manage alone, big enough to grow." She was right. I could picture it all. Display cases filled with my grandmother's recipe for apple turnovers, the sourdough starter I'd been nurturing for 3 months, maybe even a small seating area where people could enjoy coffee and pastries. Real people who would appreciate what I made, not because they had to, but because they chose to. The transformation wasn't just about the bakery. I'd started taking evening classes in business management, something I never could have afforded when every spare dollar went to Brenna's wants. I'd gotten my hair cut in a style that made me feel confident instead of just convenient. I'd even started dating again. Nothing serious, but reminders that I was still a woman with desires and dreams beyond motherhood. My supervisor at the diner noticed the change, too. "You're different, Diana," she said one afternoon. "Lighter somehow, like you've been carrying something heavy and finally put it down." She wasn't wrong. For the first time since Brenna was born, I went to bed each night planning for my own future instead of worrying about someone else's happiness. I'd blocked Clayton's number after he called twice, trying to maintain a relationship for Brenna's sake. I'd changed my address without leaving a forwarding number. I'd built walls around my heart that were higher and stronger than any I'd ever known. If they wanted me gone from their perfect family, then I'd be gone completely. But late at night, when the excitement of planning faded and the silence of my apartment pressed in around me, I still felt the ache. Not regret. I'd never regret protecting myself from more pain. But grief for the daughter I'd lost long before I signed those papers. The little girl who used to help me bake cookies, who'd believed her mommy could fix anything. That child was gone, replaced by someone who valued things over people, comfort over love. Diana's kitchen opened on a crisp October morning, and I'll never forget the smell of my first batch of cinnamon rolls filling the space. Mrs. Patterson from the flower shop next door was my very first customer, and when she bit into one of those rolls, her eyes actually rolled back with pleasure. "Oh, honey," she said, "this is heaven, pure heaven." By noon, I'd sold out of everything I'd baked, and people were asking when I'd have more tomorrow. For the first time in my adult life, I was succeeding at something that was entirely mine. The weeks that followed were a blur of early mornings, flower-covered aprons, and the sweet exhaustion that comes from doing work you love. Regular customers started emerging. Mr. Chen, who came for coffee and a blueberry muffin every Tuesday, the book club ladies who met monthly for my lemon scones, young mothers with strollers who appreciated having a place that welcomed children without judgment. I was building a community, something I'd never had when I was too tired and broke to socialize. 3 months in, I hired my first employee, a college student named Riley who reminded me of myself at that age, full of dreams and determination. Business was good enough that I was actually saving money again, something I hadn't done since before Brenna was born. I'd even started looking at the apartment upstairs, thinking about moving out of my cramped place and truly starting fresh. Life felt full in a way it never had before, complete without needing anyone else to validate my worth. That's when Maxine called with news that made my blood run cold. "Diana, you need to know. Brenna's been asking around about you. She went to your old apartment building, tried the diner where you used to work. She's looking for you." My hands started shaking so badly I had to set down the mixing bowl I'd been holding. "What does she want?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "I don't know," Maxine said carefully, "but Clayton's been having some financial troubles. Something about bad investments and the dealership struggling. The timing wasn't coincidental. It never was with Clayton. When Brenna was small and he was flush with success, he couldn't be bothered with custody visits or child support payments. Now that his perfect life was cracking, suddenly he remembered I existed. But I wasn't the same desperate, broken woman who'd signed those papers. I'd built something beautiful from the ashes of that relationship, and I'd die before I let them destroy it. "If she shows up here," I told Maxine, my voice steady and cold, "I'm not her mother anymore. She made that choice, and I'm living with it just fine." She walked through my door on a Tuesday morning, and for a moment I didn't recognize her. 15 now, tall and angular where she'd once been soft and round, designer clothes hanging loose on her frame like she'd lost weight. But those eyes, still my green eyes, though they looked older, sadder than any 15-year-old should. I was behind the counter arranging fresh pastries when I heard Riley's cheerful greeting die mid-sentence. Diana? She called uncertainly. There's someone here to see you. I looked up and my heart stopped. Brenna stood there clutching an expensive purse, her perfect manicure chipped, studying my bakery like she was seeing an alien world. For 3 years, I'd imagined this moment. What I'd say, how I'd react. But now, facing the child who'd ripped my heart out and handed it back to me in pieces, I felt nothing but cold determination. "Can I help you?" I asked in the same polite tone I used with strangers. "Mom?" Her voice cracked on the word, and she looked so young suddenly, so lost. But I'd learned the hard way that Brenna was an expert at manipulation, at making people feel sorry for her when she wanted something. "I'm sorry, you must have me confused with someone else," I said clearly. "I'm Diana, the owner. If you'd like to order something, I'd be happy to help you." The color drained from her face. "Mom, please. I know you're angry, but I need to talk to you. It's important." Riley shifted uncomfortably behind the register, clearly sensing the tension. 2 of my regular customers, the book club ladies, were openly staring. This was exactly what I'd feared, this disruption of the peaceful world I'd built. "I'm not your mother," I said firmly but quietly. "You made that very clear 3 years ago when you chose a different family. Now, would you like to order something or should I ask you to leave?" Brenna's eyes filled with tears. Real ones, I could tell, though that didn't change anything. "Mom, please, just 5 minutes. Daddy Clayton lost everything. The house, the cars, even Vivienne left him. We're living in an apartment now, and he can't afford my school anymore. I made a mistake, okay? I was 12 and stupid, and I'm sorry." There it was. The truth I'd suspected from Maxine's call. They didn't want me back because they missed me, or realized they'd been wrong. They wanted me because I was useful again, because their better option had disappeared. I walked around the counter slowly, deliberately, until I was standing directly in front of her. Close enough to see the dark circles under her eyes, the way her expensive clothes hung loose like she'd been living on stress instead of food. Close enough to remember how she used to smell like strawberry shampoo and childhood dreams. But I felt nothing except a cold, protective fury. "Let me make something very clear," I said, my voice low but carrying clearly through the suddenly silent bakery. 3 years ago, you looked me in the eye and told me you wanted someone else to be your mother. You said I didn't care about you, that I couldn't give you anything good. You were right. I couldn't give you what Clayton could." Brenna flinched like I'd slapped her, but I wasn't finished. "So I signed those papers and I let you go. I let you become someone else's daughter, someone else's problem, someone else's responsibility. And you know what I discovered? I was finally free to become who I was meant to be." I gestured around my bakery, at the warm lighting and the customers who looked at me with respect, at Riley who watched me with admiration instead of resentment. "I built this. Me. Not because I had to, not because someone forced me to, but because I wanted to. And it's mine." "I know you're hurt," Brenna whispered, tears streaming down her face now. "I know I was awful to you, but I'm still your daughter, aren't I? Blood doesn't just disappear." The audacity of it took my breath away. After years of choosing wealth over love, comfort over family, now she wanted to claim blood when it was convenient. "No," I said firmly. "You're not my daughter. My daughter died the day she chose a pool and cable television over the mother who loved her more than life itself. You're just a stranger who happens to share my DNA." The book club ladies were whispering now, and I could see Mrs. Patterson from the flower shop pressing her face against the window. This would be the talk of the neighborhood for weeks, but I didn't care. I'd spent too many years caring what other people thought, trying to be good enough, grateful enough, quiet enough. "What I think you're really asking," I continued, is whether I'll let you move back in with me now that your better option fell through. Whether I'll support you financially, emotionally, maybe help pay for that private school you love so much. Brenna's face went white, confirming what I already knew. The answer is no. I'm not your backup plan, and I'm not your safety net. You made your choice, and I made mine. Brenna collapsed into one of my mismatched chairs, sobbing like the world was ending. Maybe for her, it was. Please, she gasped between tears. I don't have anywhere else to go. I'll do anything. I'll work here. I'll help you. I'll be the daughter you always wanted me to be. The desperation in her voice was real, raw, and it might have broken my heart 3 years ago. But I'd spent too many nights crying myself to sleep, too many days wondering what I'd done wrong, too many months rebuilding myself from nothing to be moved by tears now. The daughter I always wanted you to be? I repeated, and I could hear the ice in my own voice. Brenna, you were exactly the daughter I wanted. When you were small and you'd help me mix cookie dough, when you'd fall asleep reading next to me, when you'd tell me about your day at school, that was perfect. I never needed you to be anything other than loving and loved. You chose to want more. Riley had stepped closer, probably ready to call the police if this escalated, but I appreciated her protective instinct. The book club ladies had given up any pretense of not listening and were watching like this was their weekly entertainment. Mrs. Patterson had actually come inside and was pretending to browse my day-old pastries while clearly eavesdropping. Let them watch. Let them see what happened when someone tried to manipulate Diana Hartwell now. Here's what's going to happen, I said, pulling a business card from behind the register. I'm going to give you the number for social services. They can help you and Clayton figure out housing assistance, food stamps, whatever you need. But you're not going to get it from me. Brenna stared at the card like it was a snake. You're really going to let me be homeless, she whispered. You're really going to turn your back on your own child? The manipulation was so obvious, so calculated that I almost laughed. Almost. I'm going to let a young woman who legally has different parents deal with her own family's problems, I corrected. Just like you wanted, just like you chose. I walked to the door and held it open, my message clear. Vivian is your mother now, remember? Clayton is your father. I'm sure they'll figure something out. They're such good providers. Brenna stood on shaking legs, mascara streaking down her cheeks, looking around my bakery one last time like she was memorizing it. I hate you, she whispered as she passed me. I hate you so much. Good, I replied calmly. Hate is honest. It's more honest than you've been with me in years. The door chimed as it closed behind her, and the silence that followed was deafening. Riley stood frozen behind the register, her eyes wide with shock. The book club ladies stared at me like I'd just performed magic, and Mrs. Patterson clutched her day-old scone like it was a lifeline. For a moment, I wondered if I'd gone too far, if I should run after her, if I should, no. I caught myself before I could spiral back into the woman who always second-guessed herself, who always wondered if she was being too harsh, too demanding, too much. Diana, Mrs. Patterson said softly, approaching the counter. Honey, are you all right? I looked at her kind face, lined with 70 years of life experience, and realized I was more than all right. I was free. I'm perfect, I said, and meant it completely. That was incredibly brave, one of the book club ladies called out. My daughter went through something similar. Sometimes you have to protect yourself, even from your own children. Riley nodded vigorously. That was amazing, Diana. I've never seen anyone stand up for themselves like that. The support surprised me. For so many years, I'd been told I should be grateful for any relationship with Brenna, that I should accommodate her demands, that I should just be happy she was willing to see me at all. But these women, my customers, my community, they saw the truth. They saw that I'd been manipulated by a child who'd learned to use love as a weapon, and they respected me for finally refusing to be wounded by it. That evening, I sat in the apartment above my bakery, the one I'd finally moved into after the confrontation, claiming the space that was truly mine. I could smell the lingering scent of tomorrow's bread rising downstairs, could hear the gentle sounds of my neighborhood settling in for the night. My phone buzzed with a text from Maxine. "Heard through the grapevine what happened today. So proud of you. Love you, sis." I smiled and set the phone aside without responding. I didn't need to explain or justify my choices anymore. 3 years ago, I'd signed papers giving up my parental rights to a daughter who'd already given up on me. Today, I'd finally finished the job by giving up on her, too. It sounds harsh, but it wasn't. It was honest. It was the final step in becoming the woman I was always meant to be, the one who'd been buried under years of guilt and desperation, and the exhausting work of loving someone who didn't love me back. Now I had a business that thrived, customers who valued me, a sister who supported me, and most importantly, peace. Real peace, not the fragile kind that depends on other people's approval. The kind that comes from knowing exactly who you are and refusing to apologize for it.